Let me ask you something. Have you ever wondered why some people seem to effortlessly command respect in any room they enter? Why certain individuals can influence others without saying much, while others struggle to get their point across, even when they're right? Why some people build incredible relationships and networks that propel them forward, while others remain stuck and overlooked. Despite having all the technical skills in the world, the answer isn't intelligence. It isn't talent. It isn't even hard work. The answer is emotional intelligence and social skills. And here's the brutal truth that 99% of people refuse to accept. Your success in life will not be determined by how smart you are, but by how well you understand and manage emotions, both your own and others. Most people are walking around completely blind to the emotional undercurrents that control every interaction, every decision, every opportunity. They're reactive instead of strategic. They're awkward instead of magnetic. They're forgettable instead of influential. And they wonder why they keep hitting invisible barriers in their career and relationships. But not you today. You're going to learn the exact system that separates the emotionally intelligent from the emotionally clueless. You're going to discover how to read people like an open book, influence without manipulation, and build relationships that become your greatest asset. This isn't theory. This is a practical blueprint for social mastery. Chapter 1: The Hidden Cost of Emotional Blindness. Before we dive into how to master emotional intelligence, you need to understand exactly what it's costing you to remain emotionally blind, because most people have no idea how much their lack of emotional awareness is sabotaging their life every single day. Let's start with your career. You might think that promotions go to the smartest person in the room, but research shows that 90% of top performers have high emotional intelligence. Meanwhile, people with average IQs but high emotional intelligence earn $29,000 more per year than those with high IQs but low emotional intelligence. Think about that. Your inability to read emotions, manage relationships, and influence others is literally costing you tens of thousands of dollars every year. But it goes deeper than money. Every time you misread someone's emotional state, you're missing critical information. When you fail to regulate your own emotions under pressure, you're making decisions from a place of reaction rather than strategy. When you can't build rapport with colleagues, clients, or superiors, you're cutting yourself off from opportunities that others with better social skills will capture. I've seen brilliant engineers passed over for leadership roles because they couldn't connect with their teams. I've watched talented salespeople struggle because they couldn't read their prospects' emotional needs. I've seen entrepreneurs with game-changing ideas fail because they couldn't persuade investors or inspire employees. The common thread: they all underestimated the power of emotional intelligence. Now let's talk about your relationships. Whether it's romantic partnerships, friendships, or family dynamics, emotional intelligence is the foundation of every meaningful connection. People with low emotional intelligence struggle with intimacy because they can't understand or validate their partner's emotions. They have surface-level friendships. Because they can't create deep emotional bonds, they experience more conflict because they react emotionally. Instead of responding strategically, here's what happens when you lack emotional intelligence. In relationships, you miss the subtle cues that tell you when someone is upset, frustrated, or withdrawing. You say the wrong thing at the wrong time. Because you can't read the emotional temperature of the room, you escalate conflicts instead of resolving them. Because you're driven by your own emotions. Rather than understanding the other person's perspective, you come across as self-centered or insensitive, even when that's not your intention. The cost compounds over time. Broken relationships, missed connections, isolation, a reputation as someone who's difficult to work with or be around. And the worst part, you often don't even realize why these things are happening. Because you're operating with emotional blind spots. But here's the good news. Emotional intelligence isn't fixed. It's not something you're born with or without. It's a learnable skill set. Every component of emotional intelligence can be developed through deliberate practice and the right strategies. Self-awareness can be trained. Emotional regulation can be mastered. Empathy can be cultivated. Social skills can be systematically improved. The people who seem naturally charismatic and influential, they've either consciously or unconsciously developed these skills through years of experience. But you don't have years. You need to accelerate this process. You need a system that allows you to develop emotional intelligence rapidly and systematically. That's exactly what you're going to get. Over the next several chapters, I'm going to break down emotional intelligence into its core components and give you practical strategies for mastering each one. You're going to learn how to read micro-expressions and body language. Like a secret agent, you're going to discover how to manage your emotional state. Under pressure like a Navy SEAL, you're going to master the art of influence and persuasion. Like a master negotiator. By the time you finish implementing what you learn here, you'll join the small percentage of people who have cracked the code on human psychology and social dynamics. You'll become someone who others gravitate toward, listen to, and want to follow. But it requires you to commit to the process and apply what you learn consistently. Chapter 2. The 5 Pillars of Emotional Mastery. Emotional intelligence isn't some vague concept that you either have or you don't. It's a specific set of skills that can be broken down into 5 distinct pillars. Master these 5 pillars, and you'll have more influence and impact than 99% of the population. Ignore them, and you'll remain stuck in mediocrity, no matter how technically skilled you become. The first pillar is self-awareness. This is your ability to recognize and understand your own emotions in real time. Most people are completely unconscious of their emotional states. They're angry, but don't realize they're angry until they've already said something they regret. They're anxious, but mistake it for excitement. They're frustrated, but can't pinpoint why. Self-awareness means developing an internal radar that constantly monitors your emotional temperature. It's knowing that when your jaw tightens and your breathing becomes shallow, you're moving into stress mode. It's recognizing that when you start speaking faster and interrupting others, you're becoming defensive. It's understanding that when you feel that sinking sensation in your stomach, you're experiencing fear or anxiety. But self-awareness goes beyond just identifying emotions. It's understanding your emotional triggers, your patterns, your default responses. Maybe you always get defensive when someone questions your expertise. Maybe you shut down emotionally when facing criticism. Maybe you become overly aggressive when you feel threatened. Self-aware people know these patterns and can catch themselves before they sabotage important interactions. Here's how to develop self-awareness rapidly. First, implement emotional check-ins throughout your day. Set alarms on your phone for every 2 hours. When it goes off, pause and ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? What's my energy level? What's my emotional state? Don't judge it, just observe it. This trains your brain to become more conscious of your internal experience. Second, start tracking your emotional triggers. Keep a journal and note every time you have a strong emotional reaction. What happened right before? Who was involved? What thoughts were going through your mind? Over time, you'll start to see patterns. You'll realize that you always get angry when people don't follow through on commitments, or that you become anxious when you're unprepared for meetings. Third, pay attention to your physical sensations. Emotions show up in your body before they show up in your conscious awareness. Tension in your shoulders might indicate stress. A tight chest might signal anxiety. A clenched jaw might reveal anger. Your body is constantly giving you emotional intelligence data. If you learn to listen to it, the second pillar is self-regulation. This is your ability to manage your emotions, rather than being controlled by them. Self-regulation doesn't mean suppressing emotions or pretending they don't exist. It means choosing how to respond to your emotions, rather than reacting automatically. People with poor self-regulation are at the mercy of their emotional states. When they're angry, they lash out. When they're anxious, they avoid important conversations. When they're excited, they make impulsive decisions. They're like emotional ping-pong balls, bouncing from one reaction to another without any conscious control. People with strong self-regulation feel their emotions fully, but they choose their response strategically. They can be angry, but still communicate calmly. They can be nervous, but still take bold action. They can be disappointed, but still maintain their composure and professionalism. The key to self-regulation is the pause between stimulus and response. There's a space. In that space lies your freedom to choose your response. Most people collapse that space and react instantly. Emotionally intelligent people expand that and respond thoughtfully. Here's a practical technique for developing self-regulation. When you feel a strong emotion arising, use the acronym STOP. S means stop what you're doing. T means take a breath. O means observe what you're feeling. P means proceed with intention. This 4-step process takes less than 10 seconds, but can prevent you from saying or doing something that damages your relationships or reputation. Another powerful self-regulation strategy is reframing. Instead of seeing challenging emotions as problems to be eliminated, see them as information to be processed. Anger might be telling you that a boundary has been crossed. Anxiety might be alerting you to prepare more thoroughly. Disappointment might be showing you that your expectations need adjustment. When you reframe emotions as data rather than directives, you maintain more control over your responses. The third pillar is motivation. This isn't external motivation like money or recognition, though those can be important. This is intrinsic motivation, driven by your values, your sense of purpose, and your commitment to growth. People with strong emotional intelligence are motivated by internal factors that sustain them through challenges and setbacks. Emotionally intelligent people have a clear sense of what matters to them. They know their core values and make decisions based on those values. Rather than just chasing external rewards, they're motivated by the desire to grow, to contribute, to make a difference. This internal motivation makes them more resilient when facing obstacles and more persistent when pursuing long-term goals. They also have what psychologists call a growth mindset. They see challenges as opportunities to learn, rather than threats to avoid. They view failures as feedback, rather than final judgments. They believe that abilities can be developed through effort and practice, rather than being fixed traits. To develop stronger intrinsic motivation, start by clarifying your values. What principles do you want to guide your decisions? What kind of person do you want to become? What impact do you want to have on others? When your actions align with your values, you'll find sustainable motivation that doesn't depend on external circumstances. The fourth pillar is empathy. This is your ability to understand and share the emotions of others. Empathy allows you to connect with people on an emotional level, to see situations from their perspective, to respond to their needs rather than just your own agenda. Most people think they're empathetic, but they're actually projecting. They assume others feel the same way they would in a similar situation. True empathy requires setting aside your own emotional experience and genuinely trying to understand someone else's internal world. Empathetic people are masters at reading emotional cues. They notice when someone's smile doesn't reach their eyes. They pick up on the slight change in vocal tone that indicates frustration. They see the micro-expression that flashes across someone's face before they compose themselves. They're like emotional detectives, constantly gathering data about how others are feeling. But empathy goes beyond just reading emotions. It's also about responding appropriately to what you observe. Sometimes empathy means offering comfort and support. Sometimes it means giving someone space. Sometimes it means challenging someone in a caring way. The key is responding to what the other person needs, not what you think they should need. The fifth pillar is social skills. This is where all the other pillars come together into practical application. Social skills are your ability to use your emotional intelligence to build relationships, influence others, resolve conflicts, and create positive outcomes in social situations. People with strong social skills know how to adapt their communication style to different personalities and contexts. They can be direct with someone who appreciates straightforward communication and more diplomatic with someone who needs a softer approach. They know when to speak and when to listen, when to push and when to pull back, when to be vulnerable and when to be strong. Social skills also include the ability to manage group dynamics. Socially skilled people can read the emotional temperature of a room and adjust accordingly. They can facilitate productive discussions, diffuse tensions, and bring out the best in others. They're often the ones who get chosen for leadership roles, not because they're the smartest, but because others trust them to manage relationships and navigate complex social situations. These 5 pillars work together synergistically. Self-awareness provides the foundation for self-regulation. Self-regulation creates space for empathy. Empathy informs your social skills. Intrinsic motivation drives you to develop all of these abilities consistently over time. Chapter 3. Reading people like a human lie detector. One of the most valuable skills you can develop is the ability to accurately read other people's emotions, intentions, and mental states. While most people stumble through social interactions, missing critical emotional information, masters of emotional intelligence can decode human behavior, like reading a book written in a familiar language. This isn't about manipulation, or using people. It's about understanding them so deeply that you can respond in ways that create mutual benefit and genuine connection. When you truly understand what someone is feeling and why they're feeling it, you can communicate in ways that resonate with them, solve problems they actually care about, and build relationships based on real understanding, rather than surface-level pleasantries. The foundation of reading people accurately is understanding that all human behavior is communication. Every gesture, every facial expression, every vocal inflection is broadcasting information about someone's internal state. Most people miss this information because they're too focused on what they want to say next, or they're making assumptions based on their own perspective, rather than observing what's actually happening. Let's start with facial expressions. Your face has over 40 muscles, and different combinations of these muscles create distinct emotional signatures when someone is genuinely happy. Their entire face lights up, the corners of their eyes crinkle, their cheeks lift their smile, engages their whole face. But when someone is giving you a fake smile, only their mouth moves. Their eyes remain unchanged, sometimes even slightly narrowed. Fear shows up as widened eyes, raised eyebrows, and often a slightly open mouth. Anger creates a furrowed brow, narrowed eyes, and pressed lips. Disgust involves a wrinkled nose and raised upper lip. Surprise widens the eyes and drops the jaw. Sadness droops the corners of the mouth and eyes. These are universal expressions that transcend culture and language. But here's where it gets interesting. Most emotional expressions only last for a fraction of a second. Before people consciously control their face, these micro-expressions leak through before someone can compose themselves. If you learn to catch these brief flashes, you can see what someone is really feeling before they decide what expression they want to show you. To develop this skill, practice what I call the facial scanning technique. When you're talking with someone, instead of just making general eye contact, let your awareness include their entire face. Notice the area around their eyes, the tension in their forehead, the position of their mouth. Don't stare intensely, just expand your peripheral awareness to include more visual information. Body language provides even richer information than facial expressions. Someone's posture tells you about their confidence level, their energy, their engagement with the conversation. When someone is confident and engaged, they'll generally have an upright posture, their shoulders back, their body oriented toward you. When they're insecure or disinterested, they might hunch their shoulders, cross their arms, or angle their body away from you. Watch for changes in body language during your conversation. If someone starts the interaction with open, relaxed posture, but gradually closes off by crossing their arms or stepping back, you've hit on something that makes them uncomfortable. If they lean forward and their gesture become more animated, you've engaged their interest. Hand gestures reveal tremendous amounts of information. When people are nervous or uncomfortable, their hand movements often become more restricted and controlled. They might clasp their hands together, put them in their pockets, or hold on to something like a coffee cup or pen. When they're excited or passionate, their gestures become more expansive and animated. Pay attention to what people do with their hands when they're thinking or processing information. Some people touch their face, others fidget with objects, others gesture abstractly. These patterns are usually consistent for each individual. So once you learn someone's thinking patterns, You can tell when they're processing something complex or feeling uncertain about what you've said. Vocal patterns provide another layer of emotional intelligence data. It's not just what people say, but how they say it. Voice carries emotion in ways that words alone cannot convey. When someone is nervous, their voice might become higher in pitch, faster in tempo, or shakier in tone. When they're confident, their voice tends to be lower, slower, and more resonant. Listen for changes in vocal patterns during your conversations. If someone's voice becomes more strained when discussing a particular topic, they might be feeling stressed or defensive about that subject. If their voice becomes more animated and energetic, they're probably genuinely interested in what you're discussing. Volume changes also carry meaning. When people lower their voice, they might be sharing something they consider confidential or intimate. When they raise their voice, they might be trying to emphasize a point, or they might be becoming frustrated. The speed of speech reveals mental and emotional states. Rapid speech often indicates excitement, anxiety, or the feeling that there's limited time to communicate something important. Very slow speech might indicate careful thought, fatigue, or sometimes condescension. Sudden changes in speech patterns are particularly meaningful because they suggest a shift in emotional state. But here's the crucial point about reading people. You must calibrate your observations to each individual. People have different baseline behaviors. Some people are naturally more animated, while others are more reserved. Some speak quickly as their normal pattern, while others are naturally slow speakers. The key is noticing deviations from their personal baseline, rather than comparing everyone to a general standard. Context is everything. When reading people, the same behavior might mean completely different things. In different situations, someone crossing their arms might indicate defensiveness in a confrontational conversation, but it might just mean they're cold in an air-conditioned room. Someone avoiding eye contact might indicate deception in some contexts, but it might indicate respect or shyness in others. This is why the most emotionally intelligent people are excellent at asking clarifying questions, rather than just making assumptions based on their observations. If you notice someone's body language becoming more closed off, instead of assuming they're upset with you, you might ask, "How are you feeling about what we've discussed so far?" This gives them an opportunity to clarify their internal state, rather than leaving you to guess. Chapter 4. The Art of Emotional Regulation Under Pressure. The difference between someone who thrives under pressure and someone who crumbles isn't talent or intelligence. It's emotional regulation. The ability to maintain clarity, composure, and strategic thinking when emotions are running high is perhaps the most valuable skill you can develop. For both professional success and personal relationships, most people become less effective when stakes are high and pressure mounts. They make impulsive decisions. When they're angry, they avoid difficult conversations. When they're anxious, they shut down. When they're overwhelmed, they react emotionally rather than responding strategically. This creates a downward spiral, where pressure leads to poor emotional management, which leads to worse outcomes, which creates more pressure. But there's a small percentage of people who actually become more focused and effective under pressure. They're the ones who get promoted during crises. They're the ones others turn to when situations become difficult. They're the ones who build reputations as reliable, steady, and trustworthy. They've mastered the art of emotional regulation. Emotional regulation doesn't mean becoming emotionally numb or suppressing all feelings. Emotions contain valuable information and energy that can be channeled productively. The key is learning to feel emotions fully, while choosing your response consciously rather than reacting automatically. The first step in emotional regulation is recognizing your early warning signals. Every person has physical and mental cues that indicate their emotional state is shifting. Maybe your shoulders tense when you start to feel stressed. Maybe your breathing becomes shallow when you're getting anxious. Maybe your jaw clenches when you're becoming angry. Maybe your thoughts start racing when you're feeling overwhelmed. These early warning signals are your opportunity to intervene before your emotions take control of your behavior. Once you're in full emotional reaction mode, regulation becomes much more difficult. But when you catch emotions in their early stages, you can guide them rather than being guided by them. Here's a powerful technique for managing emotional intensity in real time. It's called the physiological reset, and it works by activating your parasympathetic nervous system to counteract the fight or flight response that accompanies strong emotions. When you notice your early warning signals, immediately focus on your breathing. Take a slow, deep breath in through your nose for 4 counts. Hold it for 4 counts. Then exhale slowly through your mouth for 6 counts. The longer exhale activates the parasympathetic nervous system and signals your brain that you're safe